Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to talk about how we can create and configure protected actions in Entra ID and what are those actions or the protected actions and what those protected actions are going to do, right? So let's dive in and I'm going to talk about that. Just a minute, let me open it up here. Right? So what are the protected actions? Protected actions are those actions whenever someone is trying to change any policy, any configurations within Entra ID, that is going to enforcing the re-authentication, as well as if they don't have the appropriate permissions, the respective user won't be able to change anything as in they won't be able to make any changes on the policies, any configurations across the Entra ID, and it is going to simply block that actions, right? So now the protected actions are those capabilities which we really want to enforce if someone should do any changes or anything across the organization by going through Entra portal. And if maybe that respective user is allowed to do it or is not allowed to do it, that means it is going to simply be blocked and is not going to allow them to make any changes, right? And that is what I'm going to show you by creating conditional access policy, which is going to really help in those situations when there are situations in the organizations that someone might change any policies or configurations and different teams might have access to it, right? And we don't want that to happen. Instead of enforcing it on particular user group or a specific group of teams or people who wanted to be allowed to do certain steps or certain actions, and remaining all others should be or should not be allowing them to change anything across, right? And that is why I'm going to show you how we can create this one, right? And then we should be able to ready for the same, right? So there are few steps that we need to take, and but before that, I wanted to give you about the prerequisites for this. To add and remove the protected actions, at least there is a requirement of Entra ID P1 license minimum, and P2 is also capable of that. And if the respective user does not have the appropriate permission or role, they should have minimum of conditional access administrator role or security administrator role. So those are the prerequisites, and those should be met in order to create protected action conditional access policy, and then the authentication context as well. So here we need to create authentication context first, and then we need to create the conditional access policy that is going to be tied up with this authentication context or this protected actions, right? So this is how we are going to create it, and I'll simply enable it, and then we can test it, right? And also there is option or way for us to simply turn it on and off or keep it on a report only mode. And if in case we wanted to delete it, we can simply delete it as well, right? So this way we can make sure we don't want to use it, or maybe we wanted to keep it in action, right? So yeah, this way we can make sure we have right permissions to do it, and we would be able to do it, right? So let's go ahead and start. So I'll share my screen and we can start with. All right, I have shared my screen here, and so under the protection, we need to go to conditional access policy, and before that, we need to create a authentication context, right? So this is very much important for us to start with that and create it, because that's the minimum requirement for this to be created, and then we should be ready with this, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let me create one of the authentication context for this. So I'll simply give it a name, auth context protected actions. So you can give any name, whichever is suitable for your requirement or whatever you feel it, right? And you can give it a description and select the ID of the policy or this authentication context and save it. So once you save it, that means it's going to be created and it is going to be showing up here under the authentication context, right? So now it is created for us and we can go ahead and add this authentication context within our conditional access policy. So let's go ahead and create conditional access policy. So from there we can add this. So I'll give it a name like CA protected actions. And I'll select it because it totally depends on which group or whatever the role we wanted to select. And we can select it. So simply, maybe I will select any of the group. Let's say I wanted to select this one and save it. So this is the group because I don't want it to target all users for now, or maybe during testing phase. And so as soon as I'm confident enough that this policy is going to be working as expected, if there are any issues, if there are any potential problems that I should be aware of, then I can definitely go through it and then mitigate those situations further, right? So under the users, I need to select the appropriate group there, and then once we select that one under the client apps and status or under the targets, so from here we can select either all apps or whatever it is, right? Because that is not really necessary here, but still we can select and other conditions as well. But the main part of this is that once we select the target, and from here we have option which is going to be or which is needed to select, right? And which we can see here, right? So this is the authentication context that I have created and which we need to select, right? On the target context side or target resources, basically. And then furthermore, we can select the conditions, whichever conditions we wanted to enforce basis on the client apps or whatever it is. And then uh, it is going to be enforcing that conditions and policies, right? So yeah, basis on that, it is going to simply make selection of that, and then the policy would be ready for us to go ahead and deploy. Also, we can set the grant permissions because that's something we wanted to enforce, and we should be good here too. And if in case we wanted to add any sessions, right? So session-based policies or in session in short, so I can select either sign-in frequency or conditional access app controls, disable residence defaults and others, and then it should be good too. And at the end, we can simply either create a policy or we can create with the read report only or turn it on or off, because until and unless we don't see any potential issues, potential problems that this policy might impact, as well as any other experiences, because we know that we have set up the appropriate conditions and target resource to it and the grant permissions as well, but still we wanted to monitor it. And once we are sure that this is going to work as expected upon everything, then we should be ready to go ahead and create it. So now it's creating and it's created. Perfect. So here's the policy, and this policy is created. So once it is created, we can go back to roles and administrators, or we can go back to the conditional access, and from there, I think it is under the roles. Where it is conditional access, authentication context. Okay. So it goes under the authentication context, and then so here we have that created. We can go back to roles and okay, right. So here it is. It is under the roles and administrators or admins, which we can see the protected actions that we have created. And from here, we would see all the protected actions which are added here. And definitely those are not part of this one which we have created. But definitely you can see that which we can add into the protected action context. Also from here, there is an add button for us, and we can simply select this one and add respective permissions, which permissions we wanted to add. Let's say, which is Microsoft.directory deleted item slash delete. So now what does this mean is that permanently delete object which can no longer be restored. So this is that permission if I wanted to add, and I can simply save this one, right? And this permissions, this permission would be added there so that we can protect this action, that this action cannot be performed by any user or any group which is part of this conditional access policy, and they won't be able to perform those operations or actions at all, right? So yeah, this is how we can make sure the protected actions are configured and test it definitely so that we get to see the experience, how it works, and what are the flaws, or if there are any issues or potential issues that we should be aware of, and then we can take the appropriate actions. Also, if I click on this specific actions and I can add it and save it, right? So I can add those respective permissions to each of those protected actions or authenticated context, and then those permissions would be added. So you can see that there are a number of permissions which we can add and leveraged for this purpose, and those are helpful for us in order to protect and not execute unwanted actions across the Entra tenant, right? And this capability is for protecting the different resources which we build and create within Entra ID. And maybe Entra is the resource that we are providing access to multiple different people. Maybe security team, they would be the one who would have access, definitely, but other teams, including compliance and JRC and all other teams, right? And those people should have actions, or those people should have a report or read-only access at certain level, and they should not have the maybe kind of implementer access or conditional level access or whatever it is, but at least they should have read-only access so that they can get the access or permissions whatever they need, and they should not do any other permissions or any other actions at all, right? So yeah, that is all for this video I wanted to show you, and hope you like it. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Also do watch other videos around Microsoft 365, Azure, and FinOps. And yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.